Tonight on Dreadful Visions, supermarkets are one of the few places we visit so often that we stop paying attention to our surroundings. We trust the bright lights, the security cameras, the employees in uniform, and the familiar aisles we've walked through countless times before. But once the doors are locked, the announcements stop, and the last customers leave, those same stores become enormous empty buildings filled with blind corners, stockrooms, loading bays, and people you might never expect to find inside. These are 5 unsettling supermarket horror stories inspired by ordinary shopping trips that took a terrifying turn. Story 1. The night shift worker told me not to go down aisle 12. 24-year-old Tyler Morgan had only been working the overnight shift at a large supermarket outside Columbus, Ohio, for 3 weeks when he realized the building felt completely different after closing. During the day, the store was loud. Shopping carts rattled across the floor, children ran through the aisles, announcements echoed overhead, and employees constantly moved between registers and stockrooms. After midnight, everything changed. The automatic doors were locked. The music stopped. Only the hum of refrigerators and fluorescent lights filled the silence. Tyler's job was simple: restock shelves before the store reopened at 6 in the morning. Most nights there were only 6 people inside the building. For shelf stockers, 1 cleaner, and a single night manager. Everyone wore bright blue uniforms, making it easy to recognize each other from the opposite end of the store. Or at least, that was supposed to be the case. One Tuesday night, Tyler was unpacking cereal boxes in aisle 8 when he noticed someone standing at the far end of aisle 12. Another employee, blue supermarket uniform, dark trousers, back turned. Nothing unusual. He carried on working. About 15 minutes later, Tyler pushed another stock cart toward the dairy section. As he passed aisle 12 again, the same employee was still standing there, exactly where he'd been before, completely motionless, facing the shelves. Tyler frowned. Maybe they were checking inventory. He didn't think much of it. An hour later, he returned with another delivery pallet. The employee hadn't moved. Not an inch. Tyler slowed down. That's strange. He started walking toward the aisle. Before he reached the end, another stocker named Chris suddenly appeared beside him. "Don't go down there." Tyler looked confused. "Why?" Chris glanced toward aisle 12 before lowering his voice. "Because nobody's working that aisle tonight." Tyler laughed. "Mate, there's literally someone standing there." Chris looked back toward the shelves. His expression changed immediately. "Where?" Tyler pointed. "Right there. At the end." Chris stared for several seconds, then quietly shook his head. "Tyler, there's nobody there." Tyler looked again. The employee was gone. The end of the aisle was completely empty. He walked over anyway. Nothing. No stock cart. No boxes. No footsteps. Only shelves filled with canned vegetables stretching toward the back wall. Tyler assumed he'd imagined it. Maybe the employee had simply turned the corner while he wasn't paying attention. The rest of the shift passed normally. The following night, it happened again. 2:17 a.m. Tyler was stacking bottled water when he noticed the same employee standing in exactly the same position. Same uniform, same posture, same aisle. This time, Tyler didn't say anything. Instead, he quietly walked toward the night manager's office. Manager Lisa was reviewing paperwork when Tyler knocked on the open door. "Quick question. Who's working aisle 12 tonight?" She checked the schedule. "Nobody. We finished that aisle before midnight." Tyler hesitated. "I keep seeing someone over there." Lisa smiled politely. "Probably one of the cleaners." "No. Blue uniform. Looks like one of us." Her smile disappeared. She stood up immediately. "Come with me." Together they walked back toward the grocery aisles. As soon as Tyler pointed, the employee was gone again. Lisa looked around carefully. Then she sighed. "You're not the first person who's mentioned seeing someone around aisle 12. Tyler waited for an explanation. Instead, she asked him something completely unexpected. "If you ever see them again, don't walk toward them. Just come and get me." Tyler laughed nervously. "You're joking, right?" Lisa didn't answer. She simply looked down the empty aisle for several seconds before quietly locking the stockroom door beside it. Then she walked away. For the rest of the night, Tyler couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. The following evening, just before his shift started, curiosity got the better of him. He checked the employee schedule pinned to the notice board. Every member of the overnight team was listed. 6 names, 6 people, exactly as always. Yet when he looked across the sales floor toward aisle 12, someone in a blue supermarket uniform was already standing there, watching the shelves, waiting. Tyler couldn't take his eyes off the figure. It stood exactly where it always had, motionless, head slightly lowered, facing the shelves. He looked back at the schedule one more time. 6 employees, no one unaccounted for. When he looked up again, the figure was still there. Instead of calling Lisa immediately, curiosity got the better of him. He kept his distance and watched from the end of aisle 10. Almost 2 full minutes passed. The person never reached for a product, never moved a hand, never shifted their weight. It was as though they were waiting for something. Then Tyler noticed Chris walking toward him with another stock cart. Chris stopped beside him. "You all right?" Tyler pointed without taking his eyes off the aisle. "Tell me you can see him this time." Chris looked. His expression immediately changed. "Yeah, I can." The 2 men stood silently for several seconds. "Who is that?" Tyler whispered. Chris didn't answer. Instead, he slowly backed away. "Stay here. I'm getting Lisa." Within moments, Lisa hurried across the store with the cleaner following behind her. Tyler pointed again. There, at the end. This time, everyone saw him. The man wore the exact same blue supermarket uniform as the overnight staff. His back faced them. His hands rested by his sides. He appeared to be staring at the canned food section. Lisa didn't shout. She didn't call his name. Instead, she quietly spoke into her radio. "Security to aisle 12. Immediately." Although the store didn't normally have overnight security inside the building, a patrol officer contracted by the shopping center happened to be checking another unit nearby. He arrived less than 3 minutes later. The officer listened briefly before walking cautiously down aisle 12. Everyone watched from a distance. The man remained perfectly still. About 20 feet away, the officer called out, "Sir, store's closed. Can you turn around for me?" No response. The officer stepped closer. 5 feet away, the man suddenly walked around the end of the aisle toward the rear stockroom. Not running, just walking. The officer followed. Seconds later, they heard him shout, "Stop!" By the time the rest of the staff reached the rear corridor, the officer stood alone. The man had disappeared. Every emergency exit remained locked. The loading bay doors were secured from the inside. No alarms had sounded. It was as if he'd vanished inside the building. Police searched the supermarket before sunrise. They eventually discovered something hidden behind and used shelving inside an abandoned storage area that hadn't been used since a renovation years earlier. A narrow gap behind stacked pallets led into a forgotten maintenance room. Inside were blankets, food wrappers, portable phone chargers, a battery-powered lantern, several supermarket uniforms identical to those worn by staff. There were also handwritten notes listing employee names, break times, delivery schedules, and exactly which aisles each worker usually stocked during the night. Someone had been secretly living inside the building for weeks, possibly months. Investigators believe the man watched employees from the hidden room before blending in whenever he needed food or supplies. Wearing the same uniform meant nobody questioned him if they only caught a quick glimpse across the store. The reason he spent so much time in aisle 12 became clear later that morning. Behind the shelving at the end of the aisle was the concealed entrance to the hidden maintenance room. He hadn't been staring at the shelves. He'd been guarding the doorway to where he was living. Police arrested the suspect 2 days later after another supermarket nearly 30 miles away reported a suspicious man wearing an employee uniform inside their stockroom after closing. He turned out to be a former contractor who had worked on multiple supermarket renovations across the state. He still possessed copied access keys to several older buildings. Tyler finished the rest of the month before transferring to a daytime position. He still shops at supermarkets like everyone else. But whenever he walks down a long, empty aisle and spots someone standing perfectly still at the far end, he no longer assumes they're deciding what to buy. Sometimes, they're waiting for you to look away. Story 2. Someone locked the store while I was still inside. 26-year-old Hannah Lewis only needed 3 things: milk, bread, and cat food. It was just after 10:40 p.m. when she pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour supermarket outside Indianapolis. At least, she thought it was still open 24 hours. A sign taped to the entrance explained otherwise. Due to staff shortages, the store now closed at 11 p.m. No problem. She'd be in and out within 10 minutes. The supermarket was unusually quiet. Only a handful of customers wandered the aisles while employees began pulling empty cardboard boxes onto stocking carts and closing down the self-checkout area. A voice over the public address system politely reminded shoppers that the store would be closing shortly. Hannah grabbed a basket and headed toward the dairy section. Milk. Easy. Then the bakery. Bread. Finally, she crossed the store toward the pet supplies aisle. Halfway there, another announcement played. Attention customers. The store will now be closing in 5 minutes. Please make your way to the checkout area. Hannah picked up a bag of cat food and turned back toward the front of the store. As she passed aisle 14, she noticed a man wearing the supermarket's blue employee uniform standing beside an empty stock cart. He smiled politely. Bit late for shopping. She laughed. Yeah, didn't realize you closed this early now. The employee nodded. No worries. Registers are still open. He pointed toward the front of the store before continuing to stock shelves. Everything seemed completely normal. Hannah reached the self-checkouts less than 2 minutes later. Every register was closed. The lights above them were off. Confused, she looked toward the customer service desk. Empty. No cashiers. No security guard. Nobody. She frowned and checked the time. 10:58 p.m. That couldn't be right. The lights inside the supermarket were still fully on. Thinking she had simply missed another checkout area, she walked toward the front entrance. The automatic doors didn't open. She stepped closer. Nothing. They remained firmly shut. She pressed the emergency push bar beside the doors. Locked. A chill ran through her. Surely someone would still be inside. She turned around. The enormous supermarket suddenly felt much bigger than it had only minutes earlier. Every checkout lane stood empty. Shopping carts sat abandoned exactly where customers had left them. Somewhere deep inside the store, she heard a pallet jack rolling across the floor. Relieved, Hannah called out, "Hello?" No answer. She followed the sound toward the grocery aisles. It stopped. Silence. Then, another announcement echoed through the speakers. Attention customers. The store is now closed. Please leave the building immediately. Hannah laughed nervously. I'd love to. The exits are locked. She expected someone to respond. Nobody did. Instead, she heard footsteps. Not running. Walking. Slowly. Somewhere beyond aisle 16. She hurried toward the sound. As she rounded the corner, she saw the same employee from earlier. Blue uniform. Stock cart. Head lowered while arranging products on the shelves. Thank God. She walked quickly toward him. Excuse me. I think someone accidentally locked me inside. The employee didn't answer. He continued placing the same can onto the shelf. Over and over and over again. Hannah slowed down. The shelf was already full. He wasn't stocking it. He was simply picking up the same can, putting it back, then repeating the movement, without ever looking up. Without acknowledging she was standing only a few feet away. Hannah stopped walking. The employee continued the same motion. Pick up the can. Place it back. Pick up the same can again. Place it back. His movements were slow and strangely mechanical, as though he hadn't even noticed she was standing beside him. She cleared her throat. Excuse me? The exits are locked. Without looking at her, the man quietly replied. I know. His voice was calm, almost emotionless. Hannah frowned. Can you let me out? The employee finally stopped moving. Very slowly. He turned his head toward her. His face looked completely ordinary. Blue uniform, name badge, store radio clipped to his shoulder. But something wasn't right. The name badge had no name, just the supermarket logo. Then he spoke again. "You shouldn't still be here." Before Hannah could answer, his store radio suddenly crackled. A loud voice came through. "All staff report to the loading bay immediately." The employee looked down at the radio, then back at Hannah. "Stay here." He walked away without another word. Hannah watched him disappear around the end of the aisle. She waited a few seconds before following. The aisle was empty. He couldn't have gone far, yet there was no sign of him. Just then, she heard another voice. "Miss." She turned around. An older man wearing a reflective security jacket hurried toward her from the opposite direction. "There you are. We've been looking everywhere." Hannah almost laughed with relief. "Finally, someone locked the doors while I was still shopping." The security guard nodded. "Yeah." The night manager noticed one basket hadn't been abandoned and realized someone might still be inside. "Come with me. I'll get you out." As they walked toward the front of the store, Hannah glanced back down aisle 16. The employee was standing there again, exactly where she'd left him, watching them. She pointed. "That's the guy I was talking to." The security guard stopped. "Which guy?" "The one standing there." The guard looked straight down the aisle. His face tightened. "There's nobody there." Hannah looked again. The aisle was empty. By the time they reached the front entrance, 2 police officers had arrived. One of them apologized. The night manager had accidentally believed every customer had already left before locking the building. It wasn't common, but it had happened before. As Hannah prepared to leave, she mentioned the strange employee. The officers exchanged a quick glance. The night manager immediately asked her to describe him. Blue uniform, dark hair, no name on the badge. He kept stocking the same shelf over and over. The manager quietly led everyone back to aisle 16. She stopped beside the canned food display, then sighed. This wasn't the first report. Over the previous 2 months, 3 overnight cleaners had described seeing an unknown employee working that exact aisle after closing. Each gave almost the same description. Each assumed he worked for another department. None of them ever spoke to him for more than a few seconds. Police reviewed the CCTV footage. The cameras showed Hannah standing alone in aisle 16 talking to no one. But something else caught their attention. At the far end of the aisle, hidden behind a promotional display, was a narrow staff-only door leading into an old storage corridor left over from a renovation years earlier. Investigators searched the forgotten passage the following morning. Inside they found blankets, bottled water, canned food, portable batteries, and several genuine supermarket uniforms stolen from employee lockers. Whoever had been living there had created a hidden sleeping area only a few feet behind the shelves where Hannah first saw him. Detectives believe the suspect deliberately pretended to stock shelves whenever he heard someone nearby, knowing employees would assume he belonged there. As soon as people looked away, he slipped through the concealed staff door and disappeared into the hidden corridor. He was arrested a week later after attempting the same trick inside another supermarket nearly 50 miles away. The copied uniforms, fake name badges, and hidden camps found in multiple stores linked him to a string of overnight burglaries across the state. Hannah still shops late at night when she needs groceries. But now, whenever she sees an employee quietly stocking shelves in an otherwise empty aisle, she always looks twice. Because sometimes, the person wearing the uniform doesn't actually work there. Story 3. Someone was hiding inside the delivery truck. 29-year-old Ethan Brooks had worked the loading bay at a large supermarket outside Nashville, Tennessee, for nearly 2 years. While most customers only ever saw the brightly lit aisles and neatly stacked shelves, Ethan spent every shift behind the building where deliveries arrived long before sunrise. The overnight routine never changed. At around 1 a.m., the first refrigerated truck backed into loading bay 2 with dairy products. At 2:30 a.m., frozen food arrived. Then, just before 4 a.m., the largest delivery of the night pulled in carrying groceries, drinks, household supplies, and everything needed to refill the shelves before opening. Every driver followed the same procedure. Reverse into the loading dock. Hand over the paperwork. Open the trailer. Unload the pallets. Leave. Simple. On a rainy Thursday morning, Ethan noticed something unusual before the grocery truck had even stopped moving. The rear trailer doors were vibrating, not from the engine, from inside. At first, he assumed the pallets hadn't been secured properly. It happened occasionally. When the truck finally parked, the driver climbed down looking exhausted. "Rough journey?" Ethan asked. The driver shrugged. "Construction on the interstate. Nothing else." After signing the delivery paperwork, he unlocked the trailer doors. As they swung open, a strange smell drifted out. Not spoiled food, not chemicals, just the stale smell of someone who had been inside a confined space for hours. Ethan climbed into the trailer with his pallet jack. Everything looked normal. Towering stacks of shrink-wrapped products filled the trailer from floor to ceiling. He began unloading the first few pallets while another employee scanned each shipment. About 20 minutes later, Ethan reached the final section near the front of the trailer. Something caught his attention. One pallet had been wrapped differently from all the others. Every supermarket pallet used clear plastic wrap. This one was wrapped in black plastic. No labels, no barcodes, no delivery stickers. He checked the paperwork. Nothing matched. "That's weird." The driver frowned. "Shouldn't be there." Ethan tapped the pallet. It sounded hollow. Before anyone could investigate further, a loud bang echoed from somewhere inside it. Both men froze. Another bang. Then silence. The driver immediately stepped backward. "Did you hear that?" Ethan nodded slowly. He radioed the night manager. Within moments, 2 more employees entered the trailer. Everyone stood quietly around the mysterious pallet. Another muffled thud came from inside. The night manager didn't hesitate. "Everybody out. Now." The loading bay was cleared within seconds. Police arrived less than 10 minutes later. Using bolt cutters, officers carefully removed the plastic wrapping. Inside wasn't food. It wasn't supermarket stock. It was a large wooden crate hidden between legitimate deliveries. One side had several small ventilation holes drilled into it. The officers slowly forced the lid open. The crate was empty. Fresh blankets, half-empty water bottles, protein bars, phone chargers, a flashlight. Everything suggested someone had been inside. Very recently. Then one officer looked upward. Near the roof of the trailer, a narrow emergency maintenance hatch had been forced open from the inside. Rainwater dripped through the opening onto the trailer floor. Whoever had been hiding inside the crate had escaped onto the roof of the trailer while everyone focused on opening the box. The police immediately searched the supermarket roof, surrounding warehouses, and nearby industrial estate. Nothing. The person had vanished into the darkness. Later that morning, detectives made an unsettling discovery. The trailer's GPS records showed the truck had stopped for almost 40 minutes at an abandoned truck stop nearly 60 miles away before arriving at the supermarket. The driver insisted he had only stopped to sleep while waiting for a road closure to clear. Security cameras from the truck stop told a different story. They showed someone climbing beneath the trailer shortly after midnight, but they never showed anyone climbing back out. The investigators suddenly realized whoever had been inside that crate hadn't climbed into it at the supermarket. They had traveled hundreds of miles hidden among the deliveries, and the supermarket had never been the final destination. Ethan couldn't stop staring at the open crate. The blankets were still warm. One of the water bottles had condensation running down its side. Whoever had been hiding inside couldn't have escaped more than a few minutes earlier. Police secured the entire loading bay while detectives questioned the truck driver. He insisted he had no idea anyone had been inside the trailer. The vehicle had been sealed before leaving the distribution center, and every security tag on the rear doors remained intact. At first, that made no sense. If nobody had opened the trailer, how had someone gotten inside? The answer came later that afternoon. Investigators reviewed CCTV footage from the distribution warehouse where the truck had originally been loaded. For nearly 2 hours, everything appeared normal. Forklifts moved pallets. Employees scanned barcodes. Drivers completed paperwork. Then, just before the trailer doors were sealed, one camera briefly lost sight of the vehicle as another truck reversed across its view. The obstruction lasted only 34 seconds. When the camera's view cleared, the trailer looked exactly the same. But detectives believe those 34 seconds were all someone needed. Further examination of the trailer revealed fresh tool marks around the roof maintenance hatch. It had been opened from the outside before the journey even began. Police now believe the suspect climbed onto the roof while the trailer was parked, entered through the hatch, and lowered himself into the crate before the final pallets blocked it from view. The plan wasn't to steal groceries. It was to reach supermarkets after closing without ever walking through the front doors. The investigation quickly uncovered a disturbing pattern. Over the previous 6 months, several supermarkets across Tennessee and Kentucky had reported overnight burglaries where expensive electronics, cigarettes, lottery tickets, prescription medications, and cash from customer service safes disappeared without any signs of forced entry. Alarm systems never activated. Security cameras only showed employees unloading delivery trucks. Nobody questioned the trailers. Nobody searched them, because everyone assumed the deliveries were secure. 2 nights after Ethan's report, another supermarket nearly 100 miles away called police after an overnight cleaner heard movement inside a delivery trailer long after it had been unloaded. This time, officers surrounded the loading bay before opening the vehicle. A man was found hiding above the ceiling supports inside the trailer. He surrendered without resisting. Inside his backpack were copied store floor plans, bolt cutters, counterfeit employee uniforms, lock-picking tools, and handwritten notes listing delivery schedules for more than 20 supermarkets. Detectives later confirmed he had worked for a logistics company years earlier and understood exactly how overnight deliveries operated. He knew which stores unloaded trucks with only 2 or 3 employees. He knew when loading bays were left unattended. Most importantly, he knew that nobody expected a delivery truck itself to be the way someone entered the building. The arrest solved burglaries stretching back almost a year. Several stolen items recovered from storage units included unopened cartons of cigarettes, thousands of dollars in lottery tickets, pharmacy medication, laptops, and cash taken from supermarket offices. Ethan returned to work the following week. The company introduced new security procedures almost immediately. Every trailer was searched before unloading. Roof hatches were inspected. Drivers remained on site until every compartment had been checked. The strange black-wrapped pallet was never forgotten. It remained the reason the entire operation fell apart, because if it had looked like every other pallet, nobody would have questioned it. Now, whenever Ethan hears a delivery truck reversing into the loading bay before sunrise, he no longer assumes it's only carrying groceries. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing arriving at a supermarket isn't listed anywhere on the delivery manifest. Story 4. The security cameras went black at exactly 3 a.m. 35-year-old David Ramirez had worked overnight security at a 24-hour supermarket outside Charlotte, North Carolina, for nearly 5 years. Unlike most security guards, David rarely left the surveillance office. His entire shift revolved around watching 32 CCTV cameras positioned throughout the building. Every entrance, every checkout, every aisle, every stockroom, every loading bay, every blind corner. Nothing inside the supermarket escaped the cameras. Or at least, that was how it was supposed to work. The overnight shift was usually uneventful. Employees stocked shelves. Cleaners polished the floors. Delivery drivers unloaded trucks. David occasionally walked the building once every hour before returning to the security room to monitor the cameras. The quietest part of every night always came between 2:45 and 3:15 a.m. Deliveries had finished. The shelves were nearly stocked. Most employees took staggered breaks in the staff room. The supermarket became almost completely silent. One Monday morning, David noticed something strange. At exactly 3 a.m., camera 18 went black. It monitored aisle 9. The screen flickered once before displaying nothing but static. 5 seconds later, the picture returned. David made a note for maintenance. Faulty camera. Nothing unusual. The following night, exactly 3 a.m., camera 18 went black again. 5 seconds, then returned. Same as before. By Friday, the same thing had happened every single night. Always the same camera. Always the exact same time. Always lasting exactly 5 seconds. Maintenance inspected the system. They replaced the camera, changed the wiring, even swapped the recording unit. Nothing changed. Monday night arrived. 3 a.m. Camera 18 went black. Again, David decided to compare the recordings from previous nights. He placed the footage side by side. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Every blackout lasted exactly 5 seconds. Not 4, not 6. Exactly 5. That wasn't how electrical faults behaved. Curious, David rewound each recording to a few seconds before the signal disappeared. That's when he noticed something no one else had seen. Just before every blackout, someone walked into aisle 9, always wearing a supermarket uniform, always pushing a stock cart, always entering from the same direction. The screen would immediately cut to static. 5 seconds later, the aisle was empty. David frowned. He checked the employee schedule. Different people worked those nights. Different stockers. Different cleaners. Yet somehow, the same person always entered aisle 9 just before the signal disappeared. The following evening, David decided not to rely on the cameras. At 2:58 a.m., he walked to aisle 9 himself. The supermarket was almost silent. A few employees stocked shelves several aisles away. Everything else was empty. David stood beside the camera mounted above the aisle. 2:59. Nothing. 2 hours, 59 minutes, and 30 seconds. Still nothing. Then, a man wearing the supermarket's blue uniform appeared at the far end of the aisle. He pushed an empty stock cart toward David without saying a word. David smiled politely. Evening. The man didn't answer. He simply continued walking. 3 o'clock. At the exact moment the wall clock ticked over, the camera above David clicked. Its red recording light switched off. David looked up instinctively, only for a second. When he looked back down, the employee was gone. Not walking away. Gone. The stock cart. Gone too. The aisle stretched empty from one end to the other. No doors. No side exits. No customers. Just silence. David immediately radioed the night manager. I need everyone to stay where they are. Nobody move. Then he sprinted toward the security office. If the employee hadn't walked out of the aisle, the cameras would tell him where he'd gone. He burst through the office door and rewound the footage. At exactly 3 a.m., the screen filled with static. 5 seconds later, the aisle was empty. The employee had vanished during the blackout. Then David noticed something far more disturbing. The timestamp on camera 18 still read 3 hours and 5 seconds. But every other camera in the supermarket read 3 hours and 17 seconds. Somehow, 12 seconds had disappeared. David replayed the footage 3 more times. The missing 12 seconds weren't a glitch in the recording. Every camera in the supermarket had continued recording normally. Only camera 18 had frozen at 3 hours and 5 seconds before suddenly jumping forward to match the others. 12 entire seconds had vanished. He immediately called the CCTV maintenance company. Within an hour, a technician remotely accessed the system. After checking the logs, he sounded puzzled. The camera wasn't losing power. It was being disconnected. Exactly 12 seconds. Every night. From somewhere inside the building. That answer made David's stomach sink. The following evening, he decided to catch whoever was responsible. Instead of watching from the security office, he hid inside the stockroom directly behind aisle 9. At 2:58 a.m., he switched off his flashlight and waited. The supermarket was almost silent. Only the distant hum of refrigerators echoed through the building. 2:59. Nothing. 2 hours, 59 minutes, and 40 seconds. Still nothing. Then, he heard it. The squeak of a stock cartwheel. Someone slowly pushed a cart into aisle 9. David peeked around the corner. The same employee. Blue supermarket uniform. No name badge. Head lowered. He stopped directly beneath camera 18. Instead of stocking shelves, he reached up toward the ceiling. David watched him remove a small black device from his pocket. The man pressed it against the back of the camera housing. The red recording light immediately switched off. David didn't hesitate. Stop. The employee looked over his shoulder. For the first time, David saw his face clearly. He didn't recognize him. The man sprinted toward the rear warehouse. David chased him through the empty aisles, knocking over cardboard displays as they ran. The suspect knew the building surprisingly well. He cut through employee-only corridors, storage rooms, and emergency exits without slowing down. By the time David reached the loading bay, the man had disappeared. But this time, he hadn't escaped completely. The small black device had fallen from the camera during the chase. Police examined it the following morning. It wasn't sophisticated, just a homemade electronic jammer designed to interrupt the camera's video signal for exactly 12 seconds. Detectives reviewed months of footage. Every single blackout happened while the suspect crossed the same blind spot between aisle 9 and a locked tobacco storage room. During those missing 12 seconds, he quietly entered the secured room using copied keys before reappearing later dressed as an ordinary employee. No one questioned him. He already looked like he belonged there. The investigation uncovered a theft operation stretching back almost 18 months. Rather than stealing large amounts at once, the suspect removed only a handful of expensive cigarette cartons, prepaid gift cards, and over-the-counter medications each night. The losses were so small they blended into normal inventory discrepancies. Store management assumed they were accounting errors. By stealing a little at a time, he avoided attracting attention. The police finally identified him as a former CCTV installation contractor who had helped upgrade the supermarket's surveillance system years earlier. He knew every camera angle, every blind spot, every maintenance corridor. Most importantly, he knew exactly where camera 18's wiring could be interrupted without affecting the rest of the system. 3 weeks later, officers arrested him while attempting the same method at another supermarket across town. Inside his van, they recovered copied employee uniforms, duplicated master keys, homemade camera jammers, cigarettes, electronics, gift cards, and notebooks documenting camera layouts from more than a dozen different supermarkets. After the arrest, David requested one small change. A second camera was installed overlooking camera 18 itself. Not the aisle, the camera. Because sometimes, the thing you should be watching isn't the blind spot, it's the person creating it. Ever since then, whenever David notices a CCTV camera briefly flicker anywhere he shops, he doesn't assume it's just a technical fault. Sometimes, someone is counting on everyone believing exactly that. Story 5. Someone kept calling my name over the store speakers. 23-year-old Megan Foster had been working the overnight shift at a large supermarket outside Minneapolis for just under 6 months when something happened that every employee later insisted should have been impossible. Unlike the daytime staff, Megan rarely dealt with customers. Her shift began at 10 p.m., just before the store closed, and ended at 6 a.m., long after the morning deliveries had arrived. Most nights followed the same routine. Clock in, help close the front registers, restock the health and beauty aisles, face up the shelves, clean the section, go home. The supermarket felt enormous after the last customers left. Without shopping carts rattling across the floor or children running between the aisles, every little sound became noticeable. The refrigerators hummed constantly. The air conditioning clicked on and off. Occasionally, a pallet jack squeaked somewhere in the warehouse. Otherwise, it was silent. Just after 2:20 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, Megan was stocking shampoo bottles in aisle 15 when the store's public announcement system suddenly crackled to life. "Attention, Megan. Please report to customer service." The announcement echoed throughout the empty supermarket. She looked around. Nobody else seemed surprised. Assuming the night manager needed help with something, she left her stock cart where it was and walked toward the front of the building. Customer service was empty. No manager. No employees. No customers. Confused, Megan checked the nearby office. Locked. She pulled out her phone and texted her manager. "Did someone call me to customer service?" The reply came almost immediately. "No." "Why?" Megan frowned. "The announcement." Her manager responded. "I never made one." Thinking another supervisor must have done it, Megan returned to work. 10 minutes later, the speakers crackled again. "Attention, Megan. Please report to aisle 7." Her stomach tightened. This time she didn't move. Instead, she looked across the store. Chris, another overnight stalker, looked toward her. "Did they just call your name?" Megan nodded. Chris walked over. "Who's making announcements?" "I don't know. Neither of us are near the office." They both radioed the night manager. Within seconds, she arrived looking confused. Nobody had touched the announcement microphone all night. The microphone itself was locked inside the manager's office. Only 3 people had keys. All 3 were standing together. The manager unlocked the office anyway. The microphone sat exactly where it always did. The indicator light was off. No recent announcements appeared in the system log. It was as though the messages had never been broadcast. Everyone laughed it off. Probably an electrical fault. They returned to work. At exactly 3:04 a.m., the speakers came alive for a third time. "Attention, Megan. Don't go into the warehouse." Every employee in the supermarket froze. This wasn't just Megan hearing things anymore. Everyone heard it. The voice wasn't robotic like the store's normal announcements. It sounded human, calm, almost conversational. The night manager grabbed her radio. "Nobody goes anywhere alone. Everyone stays together." The entire overnight team gathered near the front registers while the manager called the shopping center's security office. As they waited for security to arrive, another announcement echoed through the building. "Megan, he's already inside." This time, the voice sounded much closer, almost as though the person speaking was standing somewhere inside the supermarket rather than inside the office. Nobody said a word. Even the experienced night manager looked genuinely shaken. Then, from somewhere deep inside the dark warehouse behind the sales floor, a heavy metal door slammed shut. The entire overnight team stared toward the warehouse entrance. Nobody moved. The heavy steel door slowly swung back open by itself. Beyond it, darkness. The warehouse lights were motion activated, and from where they stood, they couldn't see more than a few feet inside. The shopping center's security officers arrived less than 4 minutes later. 2 guards entered through the front doors, while another remained outside covering the loading bay. The night manager quickly explained everything. The strange announcements. The warehouse door. The voice calling Megan by name. One of the guards looked skeptical. "Probably someone messing with your PA system." Still, he agreed to search the building. The guards entered the warehouse first. Megan, the manager, and the rest of the overnight staff followed several yards behind. The warehouse stretched almost the entire length of the supermarket. Towering shelves reached nearly 30 feet high, stacked with pallets of canned food, drinks, paper products, and cleaning supplies waiting to be moved onto the shop floor before morning. It was a maze. Every aisle looked identical. Halfway through the warehouse, one of the security guards suddenly stopped. Fresh footprints. Everyone looked down. A trail of muddy boot prints crossed the concrete floor. The strange part, they didn't lead in from the loading bay. They came from deeper inside the warehouse, as though someone had already been there before the staff arrived. The guards followed the prints until they reached a locked storage cage used for expensive electronics and tobacco products. The padlock hung open. Inside, several shelves were empty. One guard immediately radioed the police. While everyone focused on the storage cage, the supermarket speakers crackled once again. Attention security. You're looking the wrong way. The entire warehouse fell silent. One of the guards sprinted back toward the manager's office where the announcement controls were located. The others remained inside the warehouse. Then, a loud crash echoed from the opposite side of the building. The guards ran toward the sound. Megan followed several seconds behind. When they reached the loading bay, the emergency exit door stood wide open. Cold night air rushed inside. Whoever had been inside the warehouse had escaped. Police arrived within minutes and sealed off the supermarket. Detectives examined the public announcement system first. There were no signs of hacking, no wireless interference, no remote connection. Instead, they discovered an older maintenance microphone hidden inside a forgotten communications cabinet above the warehouse ceiling. The microphone had been disconnected years earlier during a renovation, or so everyone believed. Someone had secretly repaired the wiring and connected it back into the store's speaker system. The voice hadn't come from the manager's office at all. It had come from somewhere above the warehouse. Investigators then searched the ceiling space. Hidden above the suspended ceiling tiles, they found a narrow maintenance walkway running almost the entire length of the building. Inside were blankets, food containers, portable batteries, flashlights, copies of employee schedules, store maps, and handwritten notes listing staff names, including Megan's. Police believed the suspect had been secretly living above the warehouse for several months after entering through an unused rooftop maintenance hatch. From there, he could listen to employee conversations through ceiling vents, learn their names, observe their routines, and occasionally use the forgotten microphone to distract workers whenever he wanted access to restricted storage areas. The announcement warning Megan not to enter the warehouse hadn't been intended to help her. It had been intended to keep everyone away from the area while he emptied the electronics cage. The final announcement, "You're looking the wrong way," had bought him just enough time to escape through the loading bay. 3 weeks later, detectives arrested a former electrical contractor after another supermarket reported unusual announcements over its speaker system during the overnight shift. Inside his van, officers recovered copied roof access keys, ceiling access tools, employee schedules from multiple supermarkets, portable radios, stolen electronics, cartons of cigarettes, and maintenance manuals showing the layouts of older store communication systems. Megan finished out the year before accepting a job somewhere else. She still shops at supermarkets without giving it much thought. But every now and then, she hears a routine announcement asking for an employee to report somewhere. And for just a split second, she wonders whether the voice belongs to the manager or someone hiding above the ceiling. If you enjoyed tonight's stories, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment telling me which supermarket story unsettled you the most, and subscribe to Dreadful Visions for more realistic horror stories inspired by the everyday places we visit without a second thought. New long-form stories are uploaded every other day, and the next ordinary location might hide an unforgettable nightmare. Until next time, stay aware of your surroundings, trust your instincts, and remember that the brightest places can sometimes hide the darkest secrets. Sleep well tonight, if you can.